In my initial video, I mentioned that prostitution should be legal in Western society. In this video, I'll try to explain why I have this opinion. But first, let me go through some history. Ever since the beginning of civilization, brothels and prostitution was legal and widespread. It was seen as a place for reducing stress and preventing masturbation. A brothel was usually run by a madame, who in most cases was an experienced prostitute and would pay taxes as well as hire and provide their employees, shall we call them, with a room to live, food, and some safety. However, prostitution was made illegal after World War II for another reason. During the Nazi occupation of France, several German troops used these brothels for their pleasure, and eventually these two sides ended up helping one another. After the war finished, these prostitutes were seen as illegitimate collaborators and ended up being subject to abuse. In several instances, they were dragged out onto the streets, had their heads shaved, and were often carved with swastikas. This trend continued all across the West and eventually became illegal. In recent years, however, this trend has pretty much been reversed. Most European countries have made prostitution legal, while some have made it both legal and regulated. As of 2014 in Canada, the act of buying sex is illegal, but selling it is legal. In other words, if a client, for example, were to ask a sex worker for sexual favors, they would be committing a felony. But a prostitute selling it, on the other hand, they would not be breaking any law. The same applies in Sweden, and many other countries are beginning to adopt that same kind of law as well, where they want to protect the prostitute instead of the client. In the United States, on the other hand, prostitution is strictly illegal, with the exception of the state of Nevada, where prostitution is both legal and regulated. Ever since 1992, Australia has made prostitution legal and regulated in some territories, while in others it is just legal. And in New Zealand, because of the Prostitution Reform Act of 2003, buying and selling sexual favors is also legal and regulated. New Zealand has been known to have the most liberal prostitution laws in the world, and many other countries have gained an interest in it to see what it would look like.
Tim Barnett's phone calls these days are all about sex. Barnett knows around 10 MPs still don't know how they'll vote, and he's determined to win them over.
I think it's about completing the replacement of old-fashioned, irrelevant law that tries to moralise with legislation that's actually relevant to people.
The lobbyists have been hanging around Parliament all day.
It is very crucial. I don't think the debate will come around again, for a number of years, and there is a lot that weighs on this.
I'm nervous that a basic civil right might be denied a stigmatised minority that's already working under very risky circumstances.
Those who vote for accept that we can do better than the current messy law and that this bill is a workable improvement.
MPs today received letters from Tim Barnett urging them to vote for it and urging those supportive of it to change other MPs' minds.
Begin the final controversial vote on whether to give legal protection to prostitutes. And both sides of the decriminalisation debate predict a narrow victory. Political reporter Garth Bray explains.
Tim Barnett gets his last chance to sway the doubters.
Will 61 of us vote to remove the last significant vestige of Victorian moral law from the New Zealand statute book? Yes, Mr. Speaker, I believe we will.
The ayes are 60, the noes are 59, abstention 1. The bill will be read a third time. Unlock the door.
NZBC had been looking at changing the law for some time. Sex workers were involved at all levels, so they were being asked when they came in, how do you think we should change this? What do you think we should do about this? This is what's happening at the moment. How do you think we can do better than that? So they were involved at all stages. Even when it went to lawyers to help draft it into legal language, sex workers were still being involved at that level.
Many conservative governments still oppose legalizing prostitution because they believe the act would benefit only pimps while exposing the workers to harmful acts, and it would help spread many infectious diseases, including AIDS. Well, here's the part where we've been waiting for. Why should prostitution be legal? If prostitution were to become legal, it would reduce violence against women significantly. I mean, a lot of violence has happened against sex workers in the past, and they are reluctant to call the police or any kind of authority for help because the act they're carrying out themselves is illegal. So it could end up putting themselves in prison itself. In countries where prostitution is legal, brothels in general want to maintain their image as clean, safe houses, and they will often enforce certain rules on their clients to make sure that they treat the workers with, shall we call it, respect, but also to make sure that no trouble happens. So, kind of like a nightclub, you do any trouble, you get kicked out. Human trafficking would decrease, because now that the act is legal, people don't really need to go into hiding to seek it. All prostitutes who are legally employed must regularly go on checkups to maintain their health and make sure that clients don't catch any infectious diseases. Imagine a scenario where all prostitution services came from regulated means. That way there would be actually very few incidents of infections. Now this title basically speaks for itself. I mean, with prostitution legal, law enforcement can spend more time and resources on other tasks that are more extreme and harmful to the public. Just like gambling in Nevada, brothels pay a large amount of taxes to rural counties, which end up going into state revenue and then into federal revenue. So, basically more money for the public, yay! I mean, the same thing would be done with weed, but I'll get to that in another video. As it is, in countries where prostitution is both legal and regulated, the sex workers themselves have labor rights and are protected from both external and internal threats. Brothels have to be licensed and the activity can only be done in a specific area of the city. Most brothels indeed give rules for their clients to obey, and many do need to use a condom in order to participate. Most notably in the Netherlands, sex workers must regularly go on checkups to ensure good health to the public, like I mentioned, so no one gets infected. Given all the reasons I just mentioned, it would seem logical to tolerate this practice in order to keep society safer, healthier, make more jobs, make more money, and in general to be happier. But hey, you be the judge. Now that we've covered the legal aspect, the biggest obstacle is image. I mean, if your daughter were to come home and say, I want to be a prostitute when I grow up, I'm sure pretty much this would happen. We still view sex as a taboo topic and don't really want to show it off in public, even though our media is filled with it. That is pretty much something we need to reverse. I mean, let this guy explain it right here.
There's nothing wrong with sex, being sexual, or even sexualizing objects. Just because a person is sexualized doesn't mean that he or she loses worth or value as a human being. If you think they do, then you're warped and you need to have a healthier view of sex. Quit demonizing what is arguably the most human aspect of humanity.
So that's how I feel about prostitution. Let me know if you want me to do a video on why weed should be a legal substance.